Well, I've been interested in the whole people's budget process for the last couple years, but I hadn't participated, so I thought this year I would really see what it was all about.
How did you hear about it before?
Through the regular budget meetings that are held at Buckley High School, and then also through the Hartford 2000.
What has it been like since you started balancing the budget?
Today, it's been really an interesting process. It's been good to see how people get together and come to a consensus on issues that they might not have thought about before, and how tough the decisions really are to make.
What are some of the issues that have come up?
Staffing and overtime. One of the big issues that we've been looking at is how is the manpower managed to minimize overtime, and how are the managers trained to determine overtime needs and staffing needs so that they always have the optimal mix of employees deployed at any given time.
Can you tell me a little bit about your team members and where they're from?
Okay, we actually had a pretty good group. I'm from the South End. One person is from Asylum Hill neighborhood, and one person is from the Blue Hills neighborhood. And then we have a facilitator, and someone else just joined us. I'm not sure where he's from, but because it's a good mix of the different neighborhoods, I think that was really helpful.
How close are you to balancing the budget?
We're not close at all yet, but we will. We'll get there.
Thank you so much.
It's of tremendous interest to me to know all about the city budget, and I thought that this would be a very good exercise for learning in some degree of detail the city budget. Although I do have a pretty good handle and a pretty fair understanding of it, I thought this exercise would prove very useful.
Is this the first time you do this?
This is the first time that I've done this.
What has it been like since you started?
Well, it's certainly an educational experience. It's been fascinating to see. The most useful part of this so far really has been talking to the department heads, because we've tried to gauge from the department heads what the effect would be of really cutting from the department. So it's very easy to just say, okay, we're just going to do 10% across the board on each department, but then talk to fire and say, well, what does that really mean for you? And that's very meaningful. And so clearly, to do this budget the right way is you're not going to be able to do it in 3 hours. You do need each of the departments to weigh in on all city services and what it's really going to mean.
Have there been any issues that you've gotten stuck on?
We've had technical issues, but that's not an answer to your question. Clearly, some of the issues that we're going to get stuck on is you can cut 10% across the board and not affect a $48 million budget deficit. So the things that we don't, in this exercise, the things that we don't have the ability to control, for instance, increasing the state's contribution to the city budget, or working with the Board of Education budget, or working with the pensions and benefits side of the budget. Those are areas that, at least initially, we're not able to touch in this exercise. And clearly, some of those areas have to be impacted, it seems to me, to make up what this budget gap that we're looking at.
How close is your team to balancing the budget?
Well, we've been at it for about an hour and a half now, and I'd say we were about halfway there. That actually leaves us with a whole lot to do, because we cut 10% already from everything we could cut 10% from, and more in a few cases, and we're still only halfway there.
What are some of the cuts that you've made?
Probably the most dramatic cut was the Registrar of Voters office, which we cut in half. But at the end of the day, that's $290,000. This doesn't go a long way towards a $48 million problem. We had a very thoughtful exercise with the fire department in terms of the manpower that they had, and then cutting and what it would mean in terms of overtime expenses. So trying to gauge what our cut would really mean. But it's clear that we don't have the time here to have those thoughtful cuts in each department.
Would you recommend people to do this next year?
I think every citizen in Hartford should do this exercise. I think it's a wonderful way to be involved and understand your government. And yes, I would.
I am a city employee, so I found that there's a lot of things that can be improved as far as budget goes, and I'm really passionate about public health, so I wanted to give my 2 cents in.
What do you do for the city?
I'm a public health inspector.
What has it been like since you started trying to balance the budget?
With the groups, it's been really interesting, really interactive, learning things that I didn't know before, certain stipulations that we can't cross. So overall interesting and very interactive.
Can you tell me some of the things that you've learned?
Sure. I learned, for example, as far as cutting, there are a lot more union contractual obstacles that are difficult to overcome than I thought previously, and that affects how effective we are at cutting back and balancing the budget with this exercise.
Are there any other things that you've learned?
I can't think of them at this right at this second, but definitely I've learned a lot about the other departments and how they function and the purposes that they serve and how much is allocated as far as general fund goes. So.
Has the group gotten stuck on any issues or any cuts that you're trying to make that you can't make?
Yes, certainly, because we don't know the services. You know, we're not the employees. We don't work for the city, so it's hard to interpret, you know, what's a need, what's not a need. So that's definitely something that's given us more time to think about each one.
Does it help to have some of the city staff here to answer questions?
Absolutely.
How close are you to balancing the budget?
We're not as close as we would like to be, but I think last time I looked at the screen it said, you know, minus 28 or something like that. And we haven't moved it into the other segment of the exercise yet, so.
Well, I'm a longtime resident of Hartford, and I'm interested in what goes on in the city, how the budget is being developed, and how the budget is being spent.
What has it been like since you started trying to balance the budget?
Well, having been a banker for 19 years and having worked with budgets in my own, I was a former business owner in a different country. I understand what a budget looks like, what a budget should be, and what some of the things that should go into a budget. So it has not been, a new process.
How does the type of budgeting that you're talking about compare to this type of budgeting?
Well, of course, funding sources is different, expenditure sources is different, but basically what any budget wants to accomplish is the same. All budgets need to accomplish the same thing, to say you have a projection of what you're taking in and a projection of what you intend to spend.
How close is your team to balancing the budget?
Well, I think we're pretty close. We're pretty close.
Have there been any issues that you've come across, or any areas where you've gotten stuck?
Well, areas that we have talked about is that we have seen duplications in a number of areas, which we think that moving forward there should be a real thought process or a real sitting down to work out where there are duplications and where consolidations and cost savings can be made.
Can you tell me what some of those areas are?
we have several places where you see communications or for instance, there was an awkward situation where when we questioned the individual from the fire department that we noticed that the traffic lights were in his section of the budget, which we thought it would be a part of public safety in the police department or public works department as opposed to being in the fire department, and he eloquently explained why that particular section of the budget was placed, because it was an area where they felt that they developed more efficiency.
What are some of the areas that you've cut?
There are several areas. We thought that this should be a shared burden, so most departments were cut incrementally as we went through the different drill down sections of it, and we saw areas where there could be efficiencies.
Do you think it was worth it to come out here today?
Yes, because I think if you live someplace, you should be an active participant in what goes on, and knowledge is power.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
¿Y por qué decidió venir hoy?
Bueno, estaba muy interesado en saber cómo funciona el presupuesto de la ciudad. Soy residente de Hartford y tengo una casa y estaba preocupado si van a subir los impuestos, y bueno, me interesé por eso y tratar de saber cómo funciona el presupuesto, qué ajustes se pueden hacer.
¿Me puede decir qué es lo que ha aprendido? ¿Cómo ha estado el proceso de tratar de balancear el presupuesto?
Bueno, me parece que ha sido una experiencia muy interesante. He aprendido mucho. Veo que hay muy poco espacio para hacer ajustes al presupuesto. Se necesita más información para hacer esto, y sobre todo que los gastos, no se puede hacer mucho ajuste en los gastos porque todos los servicios son muy necesarios en Hartford. Sin embargo, yo creo que la ciudad tiene que ver nuevas formas de tener más ingresos. No sé cómo, pero la verdad que ajustando los impuestos no me parece una buena idea. Pero creo que acá he aprendido de que más del 50% de las propiedades de Hartford no pagan impuestos. Hay muchas propiedades, como pequeñas iglesias y otras organizaciones non-profit que no pagan más del 50%, y me imagino que las personas que tenemos casa somos los que pagamos impuestos por ellos. Aparte de eso, he aprendido de que hay muchos gastos de administración que prácticamente necesita hacerse unos ajustes administrativos o reducir el presupuesto en ese aspecto. Y así, bueno, ha sido una experiencia que he aprendido bastante.
¿Sí valió la pena venir ahora?
Sí.
¿Ya mero terminan o tienen más trabajo?
Bueno, hemos tenido un problema con el programa en sí. Parece que algo ha fallado y todavía no podemos llegar a un ajuste realístico, pero estamos en eso precisamente.
Muchas gracias. ¿Qué es lo que hace usted?
Yo trabajo para el Estado, soy trabajador social.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ustedes.
I'm the Community Engagement Director at Hartford Public Library. I'm also a member of the board of Hartford 2000.
Can you tell us a little bit about the People's Budget, how long it's been around and what it is?
We actually, the first time Hartford 2000 and the library did People's Budget was in 2003. I had no gray hair then. And we just thought that it would be a good idea to give the public an opportunity to have some input into the city budget process. And we've been doing it not every year since then, but most years, and the past 3 or 4 years we've done it each year.
What is it like? What kind of results do you see when people come out and try to balance the budget? What typically happens?
Well, people get very engaged. I think they enjoy the process, they learn a lot, and especially in recent years, I think they really appreciate that the mayor and the city council really is taking the input seriously. They seem to really value the input, and that makes people feel like it's worth doing.
What do people normally do to balance the budget? Do they just cut a lot of things? Do they somehow come up with revenue? What do they do?
Well, they do different things, and in some years, some of the participants have basically said, sorry, I can't do this, because they just can't figure out a way to do it. Occasionally, they will raise taxes, even though everybody is against raising taxes, but they get so frustrated that they figure that's the only way we can do it. They will make cuts, but they're very hesitant to make cuts. I think that everybody leaves the room with a much better understanding of what it's like to be the mayor and the city council and have to make these really difficult decisions.
Can you tell us why you do this every year and what the value is in having this for the community?
Oh, we just do it for fun. No, well, Hartford 2000, the library, and the other partners, the city and Leadership Greater Hartford and Metro Hartford Alliance, I think we all really believe in the value of the democratic process and public participation, and the end product is going to be stronger because of public participation. So it's part of all of our missions. So that's why we're really committed to doing it every year.
Certain assumptions that there is waste and or duplication in many cases, okay? And so we try to use that as part of our strategy in reducing various departments' budgets. With regards to the revenue side...
Hold for a quick second.
Yeah.
How many others use a shared change strategy as part of their reduction efforts? Okay, so a very common approach. Thanks. Keep going on the revenue side?
Well, on the revenue side, we're somewhat limited, obviously. We get 50% of our revenue from the state. That's not going to change. The only options at least that we were able to determine were, property taxes and perhaps use of the rainy day fund.
So did you raise your taxes?
We did.
And by what amount?
Approximately 5%.
5%. Okay. So we had any other tables forced to raise the mill rate? Okay. So a common strategy there. And how many others you tapped into the rainy day fund? Okay. Some amount of use there. Ted, thank you very much. What other table might like to offer some other strategies that you used? Bernie?
So I would like to just start by saying that we felt that given the amount of information that we had as to the effectiveness of all the various departments and that sort of thing, which is extremely limited, the best that we could do would be to come up with across-the-board cuts. The one exception being the registrar of voters. I think we decided we cut that in half. But other than that, the idea being that we would put a 10% across-the-board cut and then ask the department heads to figure out where best in their department, since they know them the best, where that they could make that the most effective. But realizing that that's just an average and it's probably not realistic. In other words, it's probably not the best way to do it. The best way would be to really understand where the efficiencies and inefficiencies are and to cut there, but with the information we had. And then the other side of it was that we would increase the mill rate by 3 mil, and then so pick up 10 million there, and then go back to the state for 15 million, which would be the 5 million that they took back from us and an additional 10 million.
So how many others thought going to the state and lobbying for more money was an approach that you'd use? I know we thought 5 million over here. How much did you expect to get from the state?
15.
An additional 15 million. Others were able to balance it without more state income?
And our rationale was that since the state basically has like half of our property, that they should split 50-50 with our deficit.
Okay, great, good. Any reductions that you think might have required some negotiations with labor unions? What are some of the particular reductions that you've proposed that might have required such?
Well, one thing we thought about was looking at the pension calculation and the overtime piece of the calculation.
Nice and close.
I'm sorry, can everyone hear me? We talked about looking at the overtime calculation, and in particular to the pension plans, where today there's a certain period of time that overtime adds to the pension benefit, and is it fair, is it realistic to think that going forward we can continue to do that?
Okay, so we'll look at the pension plan. That would require a change in the contracts, maybe a less generous plan or a different kind of way to provide the benefit.
Or just take out the overtime calculation?
I take out the overtime.
Take out the overtime
I see.
piece.
Okay. Were there other provisions? Yes, Victor.
As far as running into union issues, consolidation of services and cross-training employees, that would probably result in less employees needed, so to speak. Also, consolidation of departments, and also the assumption of preventative solutions as a form of compensation to cutting in other areas or other departments.
So I happen to be at this table, and Victor, I might ask you to describe a little bit more. When it came down to consolidating positions and cross-training, he had a particular example that he offered.
Do I really?
No, you don't have to, sir. What's said at our table stays at our table. Especially with the TV camera running. Please.
The last thing you said, Victor.
Consolidating departments?
Sorry, the assumption of preventative solutions, like you mentioned, I forget your name, as, you know, to compensate for cuts that were, for example, in police, cutting police, and increasing or investing in children and families as a form of
Yeah. In fact, I think Parks and Recreation might have been the one department that wasn't reduced at all as a way of engaging in prevention, recognizing that there were reductions made on the police side.
as well as health.
As well as health, yes, yeah. So other strategies. Anybody reduce the commitment to the pension fund? You did as well? Yes? By what margin? You reduced the pension contribution by 15 million at this table, by 5 million. Anybody else reduce the pension contribution? By 9? 3.6. Okay, so Mr. Mayor, you have some wiggle room. The people have spoken. Any other strategies, options that you've chosen? Maybe something that wasn't mentioned before. Something at this table that no one else has identified yet?
We increased the intergovernment reimbursement from the state by 20 million for reimbursement for the school built in the last 3 years. The audit are done and reimbursements are imminent.
Okay, so look for more reimbursements from the state for the school construction projects that have taken place, or more effective, more efficient recapture of the dollars?
No, the audits are done. I'm sorry. The audits for the state, for the school building committee projects are done, which means the state has to reimburse us within a reasonable period of time now. So all the reimbursements for that are imminent, and that's at least $20 million.
Great. Thank you. Were there any other city assets that were sold as a means of closing the budget gap? Any other garages or parkland or anything of that sort? Not much left to sell, correct?
Yeah, introducing more cost-saving measures, and one of the things that we talked about was looking at solid waste and the fact that there are so many people who do not recycle, whether it's businesses or individuals. We do understand that the majority of the stock here, many of the actual buildings are owned by people who don't live here. So why not start really finding those who are not recycling? On a day like today, we are drinking out of these great soda cans, bottles, and that's something that we should really actively think about. So more cost-saving measures.
Terrific. And folks who didn't recognize Willie Leeds Bermudez, who has gotten a haircut. Thank you. I did not recognize you at first. Others, small ideas, big ideas, out-of-the-box ideas? Jim.
So I'll speak for our group. One of the other ideas was to refinance the debt. And so we had the advice of Jose, who mentioned the advantages of that could be done within a short amount of time. Our bogey was about $10 million in that case.
Great. Who else voted to refinance the debt? I know we did this table. How much did we calculate here, Giselle? $5 million? Anybody else refinance the debt? Okay, and you guys got $10 million? Okay. Other strategies? Please.
Sorry. Well, increase the number of Hartford residents that are working, because for every Hartford resident that's working, they will at least buy a new car, which is $500 per car in taxes to the city, directly to the city, as well as increase the home ownership program and encourage them to become homeowners, because for every home they own, it's going to be at least $3,000 a year to the city, so that the more Hartford residents that are working, the more stable our government will become, because we will then have income from people who live in the city.
Councilwoman Jennings, who has been on this particular platform for quite some time. Thank you very much. Excellent point. Anyone else? Are we close to showing the numbers yet? We are getting close. Okay. So I see we have Council President Whidden, who's joined us, as well as Mayor Segarra. Would either one of you like to respond or reflect on some of the observations that have been shared so far?
Just wanted to mention that yesterday I appeared before the Appropriations Committee giving feedback on the governor's proposed budget, which does decrease our revenue by about $5.1 million. Most of my presentation was geared around the role that cities play in terms of the economic progress of our state. Cities are the economic drivers of our state, so we need to be very careful that in the process of balancing a state budget, that the investments that are strategic in terms of investing in our cities are diminished, and as a result, it's counterproductive. So for everything that we do in Hartford that promotes and grows our economy, the state gets more sales taxes, they get more payroll taxes, they get more admission fees. So they really derive a bigger set of revenue. So that was the strategy. I mean, we understand that the state, on the other hand, has been extremely generous in terms of supporting some initiatives in our city, such as developing more housing, more businesses. So that's important, and we want to continue to encourage them to do that. What I tried to explain was that the way that these cuts would be leveraged, however, after we take out our mandated contribution for education, which is about $274 million, I think, 284. After we take out public safety, which we continue to sort of cut back in terms of the numbers of positions year over year, doesn't mean that we're not spending more because of the contractual and financial obligations, that there's a very thin sliver that's left. And that's where you really start to hit our elderly, our youth, and all the people that are the most vulnerable. And we don't want to be in a situation where we have to choose between, raising taxes or cutting services. We feel that we've been extremely frugal over the last 5 years. In fact, we're spending about $20 million less, I believe, than we spent in previous years. In terms of departmental spending, not health costs, not pensions, but departmental spending. So we have tightened the belt. We have cut a lot of positions. Last year, I believe, we froze about 99 positions that that's less people providing services in certain areas. We try to be strategic, but the community always expects a certain level of service, so we try to be careful that we don't fall below that threshold. We can make, and will continue to make, strategic decisions within departments that improve operations. I think a lot of you saw significant improvements like in snow removal this year, even though we were more challenged with the amount of snow. But as compared to previous years, just having systems in place that are more effective and using technology as a way of trying to leverage. But you brought up one important point that we have been discussing, and it makes a lot of sense, and that is the cross-training and the integration. For example, in our inspections department, we have housing inspectors, we have zoning inspectors, we have health inspectors, we have building inspectors. So trying to get people cross-trained so they can either be able to determine what is tall grass, which I don't think it's that difficult to determine, right? You might need a ruler, I guess, and what's peeling paint, right? So if we can do more of that, rather than having 2 inspectors here, 4 here, 3 there, 2 there, if we can have a whole team of inspectors that is well trained that can go out and do everything from litter and trash inspections to rodent control. Just try to be more resourceful and use that with technology, because we have See-Click Fix, we have some apps of our own that we've developed just to make it more effective. So we're really, that's a great idea we're considering. In terms of asking the state for more money, the way that we're doing that is just trying to get them to redo the pilot in a different way so that we get more benefit. The way that it's being done now, even though the state portfolio of state-owned properties and the portfolio of universities and hospitals continues to grow under this formula, the resources that we would get would be less. So there's a challenge there, and that needs to be fixed. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mayor. And I just first and foremost want to thank everyone on behalf of the council for your participation in this, and know that we on the council, we all anxiously await kind of the written follow-up from Linda that kind of summarizes everything that you're doing. Every year it feels like, we have a really, really hard budget to produce. And you in this room, you're rather unique because you go through this experience and you can see what the real difficult choices are for us to make. And so that kind of puts you in our shoes for a period of time. And as we go forward, we're gonna look very closely at all of these issues. I have heard some provocative ideas just in this short period of time that I've been here. And one of them, for those of us on the council, we've been pretty steadfast in not trying to raise the mill rate in the city. And I think I heard 3 groups say that's part of your approach, right? And for all of this, we all have to be open to all possibilities to create a balanced budget. We're required to have a balanced budget. And so I think I also heard don't contribute or contribute less to the pension fund. And so one of the things I want to mention on that point is that we're kind of legally required, once the pension commission makes a determination of how much we need for contributions, in order to do that. And so this will once again be another tough few months, and thank you for participating in that. Please continue to reach out to us as we go through the process. The mayor, your budget will be produced on April 20th, right? And or it will be provided to the council, and then we'll have the budget hearing. But please stay involved and active, and know that we're trying our best in challenging circumstances and continue to think outside the box. Thank you.
So the numbers are up? Jeff, you ready to start back with us?
Sure, absolutely. Maybe we can start with Group 1. And if a representative from Group 1 would like to come up, they can walk through here. I will navigate, and they can quickly explain, share their story of how they arrived at their budget, what their group discussion was.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you. As I said earlier, our strategy was to make as many people share in the pain as possible, not just on the side of expenses in terms of city departments being cut back in budgets and so forth, but also on the revenue side in the form of taxpayers. This is a much different format than we're used to looking at in the software, but I made some notes specifically on the expense side. Police, we thought that there might be some duplication of tasks, specifically the community services portion of the police budget, and we thought maybe if we could merge that into the patrol portion of the police budget, we might be able to save some money there. Okay. We did not make any changes to the Parks and Recreation form of the budget. Okay. Personally, I think children are our greatest asset, and anything we can do to help them, I think, is money well spent. Okay. Fire department, we did make some cuts. It was about the communications budget. We reduced pretty significantly by about 25%, which is a total of $1.1 million. Again, based on just our discussions and thoughts in terms of are we duplicating a lot of these efforts. Okay. We also reduced administration and support by $500,000. Okay. Health and Human Services, we reduced the, I can't read my own writing here, the payments to community providers, okay, by $500,000. And we also reduced the public health portion of the budget by $500,000. Again, that particular item, we felt that there was a very high likelihood that there was a lot of duplication with other parts of the city government. We are recommending a reduction in the contribution to the pension fund. Now, I know that that's all based on the Pension Commission and its recommendations, but I think it would be justifiable. I think right now we're at about 80% funded in our pension, which is really quite high, I think, compared with a lot of cities and certainly compared with the state of Connecticut. So we're recommending a reduction just this one time. It's not a habit that I think we should get into, but of a little over $9 million this 1 year, okay? And let's see, what other? The other category of expenses, which is, 50 some odd million dollars. It's a kind of a large category to be under the category of other, but we thought we would reduce, again, lease payments, okay? The city owns a lot of buildings and property, and yet we're still renting from Constitution Plaza and probably other buildings around the city as well. So I think perhaps a consolidation of city offices into a property that the city already owns itself might make some sense and be able to reduce some of our lease payments. We reduced that by $820,000. And the reduction of utilities and fuel by $1.4 million. Just hopefully by a more efficient use of city vehicles, perhaps even a reduction in the number of city vehicles that are tooling around the city in terms of equipment and gasoline prices and so forth and so on. Obviously, everybody's going to have to do a little belt tightening. Okay. On the revenue side, we are recommending, again, not a habit we would want anybody to get into, but tapping into the rainy day fund for $5 million and a 5% increase in the mill rate to raise approximately $15 million. Okay. I have a question how realistic it is to go to the state and ask for additional funding right now when the state obviously has significant issues in its own budget process. So we really didn't want to rely on any of that intergovernmental transfers of money for additional revenue sources. I just want to recognize the team over here, Christina, Beverly, Albert, and our facilitator, Trish. I met a bunch of really nice people today, so any questions? Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ted. How about if we have our next group come up, Group 2? Yeah, if you're, do it from there, that's fine. Come from.
Shared sacrifices across all the different departments. And however, I'll begin with stating that Victor here offered some very great suggestions and recommendations to our group, despite the fact he's the youngest member of our group. He did very well, and he shared a lot of similarities as in regards to what Mayor Segarra had to share, especially as it related to the departments, the combined cross-training of departments with, as it relates to housing inspectors and health inspectors and so on and so forth. Let's see, so I'll begin with the police. We decided to reduce the police budget by 1.2 million overall, and 4.2 million as it relates to patrolling. We reduced the fire department's budget by 7.7 million, and we reduced families and recreation by 32,000. Nope, 32,000. We also reduced the Registrar of Voters office by 2 staff employees, which gave it a total of 162,000, which would leave us with 1 Registrar of Voters. We reduced license and inspection by 115,000. We reduced the town clerk's office by 5 employees. That gave us a total of 607,000. Let's see. Communications, we reduced by 56,000. Let's see. We reduced legal by 390,000, cultural by 820,000. We reduced human resources by 130,000, and budgeting by 240,000. Planning by 39,000, and I don't think I left anything out. License and inspection, we have it already up here at 100.
Yeah, we did an additional 65,000.
Okay, so we did an additional 65,000 from licensing and inspection. Our revenue increases included a 11,520,000 for the mill rate increase, 5 million for the state, and another 5 million from the rainy day fund. The other thing that I would like to touch on is that one of the reasons how we came up rather with reducing the fire the fire department's budget is that we discussed the fact that Hartford consists of 17,000 square miles. 13,000 square miles? No, 17. We have 17 in our notes. 17,000 square miles, and we currently... Okay, and we currently have, according to Linda Bear, we have 12 firehouses. 12 firehouses, so we decided to reduce them, the firehouses, by 3 to cover... to cover 2 square miles, considering the fact that we have had less fires, which is a great thing for the city of Hartford. We felt as though we could use less firehouses. So.
Firefighters want to lead us in a... It was a very thoughtful process. Thank you.
Thank you, Table 2. How about Table 3, please?
Okay, I'll go up from. I'll go up there.
You going up there?
She'll be bold. Training. I'm sorry, but it's the first time that I'm going to talk in front of. You can't hear me? How about now? There. Like I said, it was the first time I'm going to talk in front of people. So we did our budget by reducing each department by the 5% off. We reduced the Department of Police by an additional $1 million. The pension funds, $15 million. The fire department, $500 million. The economy department, I'm sorry, 500,000. I know, don't get scared. Economy development, that was 500,000 too. General admission, 500,000. We increased the internal government reimbursement from the state by 20 million for reimbursements for the school that they built over the past 3 years. So we reduce each expense, like we said. And I hope everybody's happy with our budget. We increased I said all. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you very much, Table 3. Table 4?
Okay, so kind of as we said before, given the information that was available, we went with a 10% cut across the board for all of the city departments, and that would save about $20.4 million, with the idea that the heads of those departments would be able to figure out how they could get some efficiencies out of their departments, but also realizing that's kind of predicated on the idea that they're all equally efficient or inefficient at this point, something that's probably not true. And then we saved $3.6 million from pensions and health concessions. And then on the revenue side, we put in a $3 million increase for a total of $10 million. And then going back to the state for $15 million, the 5 that they took back, and then an additional $10 million. So just kind of in round numbers, that's how we balance the budget.
We've got one more.
Okay, first I want to say that this whole process, I think, has given me, and probably most of us, some empathy for the mayor and the city council for what they have to go through. And so I think, making those hard decisions is hard, and we all understand and appreciate that. What our group did is we went through department by department and really looked at each one to tighten up. a little bit. I won't go through all the numbers because we didn't really apply an across-the-board percentage. We kind of looked at how much they had, basically how many staff they had, and did a little bit of analysis on that and recommendations. But some of the ideas that we really considered, like I said earlier, was going back to the labor negotiations to remove the overtime component from the pension calculation. And that's something that will help us not only in the current year, if it could get done, but also every year going forward. Public safety, we looked at pretty hard because that's the next largest category after education and the library that we couldn't, the two categories that we couldn't touch, education and benefits. So we looked at public safety next and really looked at overtime and talked about how to better manage the overtime component of their budget, which may require looking at how they manage their manpower. Do they have a management kind of software system that tallies and tells them how many staff to have on each shift so that we minimize the overtime or the need for overtime as much as possible? Then we looked at other departments too, so I don't want to just pick on public safety, but because they do have a big chunk of the budget, that's pretty important. And does leave a lot of room, maybe to look at more, to be more efficient. Eliminating some redundancies in other departments, like the registrar's office, looked pretty obvious. So we talked about that, and that's included in our notes. Restructuring staff support to city council, where you have 9 part-time city council members, each having 1 full-time staff. So we thought we could cut that down to 5 full-time staff to support all of the city council. And then we looked at debt restructuring to save $10 million on the debt service, if that could be done. And then another thing, if anyone who knows me knows that I'm all about increasing recycling in multi-unit apartment buildings. So look at implementing an enforcement on that and fining those property owners that do not have recycling because it is statutorily required. So I can go on about that, but I think that's all I had. And I also want to thank my team members and the facilitators and all of the city employees who are here today as resources. That was very helpful.
Okay, friends, in a few minutes we'll close, right? And we'll talk about where we go from here. But before we move on to those steps, and we've been talking a lot about the recommendations you forwarded, but just a moment about the process. How did this feel? Claudette, thank you. I think you probably spoke on behalf of a great number of people in terms of the empathy that has been increased as a consequence. But help us understand how this day has been for you and what worked in terms of the process, what didn't work so well for you. Anyone would like to comment on how this experience was for them? Anybody at table 2, my colleagues here?
You don't want it to be an emotional, because you have to have clear thinking, but when you say cutting across the board, it's affecting people. You're looking at the departments, but people in that area or those areas are being affected. So then it's like a ping in your heart because you're eliminating a number, but then there are numbers underneath. So there are some emotion that's involved as well.
Thank you very much. Please.
I think this has been a great process. I think it's very creative, and it's given us an opportunity to meet some people who we would never have met before. And I think that in terms of being able to cut things, totally agree with all of the groups here that it's a very difficult thing to do. At the same time, as residents of Hartford, if we had a system by which, even in this process, right, if we would be able to compare reports or data from different departments, then we would be basing our decisions on more factual evidence instead of just the emotional. And I think that would be instrumental going forward.
Thank you, Elise. Thank you. Clearly, one constraint is the fact that you didn't have as much information as you might like and didn't have nearly as much time as you might like, but you got a taste of it anyway.
I thought I'd just comment because I'm a student at the Trinity College, and so for one of my classes they said I could go out here and like watch this process because I'm in urban studies, so I'm supposed to learn about how these cities grow and work. And I'd just like to say this was a really interesting opportunity because I come from rural northern Wisconsin, so the concerns for a little township in the Midwest are very different from a big city on the, or even, I mean, Hartford's not like New York or anything, but still, a city on the East Coast, it changes a lot, and it was interesting to see because even though you wouldn't think it, there are quite a few differences in how people feel and what parts of the budget are really important. I mean, there were things that were in common too, like I saw that people don't like to do things that get other people unemployed and stuff, but there were other distinctions where it was kind of like differing priorities from what I've seen back home, and I just thought that I'd say this was a really interesting exercise that kind of helped me to understand how budgeting and how cities work on the East Coast, how that thought process works. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone at this table want to comment on how the process was for them? Thanks.
Really, it's pretty interesting on what we have to say today, but two departments we have to look very keenly on before we make any cuts. I would say the fire department and the police department, because as soon as something goes wrong, we blame those people. So we have to be very careful in what we do to those two departments. Thanks.
Anyone else would like to share? So, did you have a difficult time reaching agreement? What helped you in the end to reach the agreements that you reached? Aha. Councilwoman Jennings said the 2-minute warning was helpful. The pressure of time. What's the deadline for approving the budget this year? May 31st. So the council will know that by May 31st, it has got to get its job done. Everybody needs the pressure of time. What else might have helped us reach agreement? Jackie?
Well, you get a lot more flexible when you have 10 minutes left than when you had 2 hours, you know.
Yes, yes.
Somehow you have to say, all right, I give up, whatever.
Yes.
Again, this restates my thinking, and why we can't get more flexibility. The state can't give us more flexibility on taxes, a different way to raise revenue. We're just locked in here. First, 50% of our properties are not taxable, and we're the capital cities that we have to put up and provide services for the state, and we don't get reimbursed for that, and we can't be creative in coming up with a different way of raising revenue. I've been through this a couple of times now, and every time it seems that's more and more important, and I don't know, and maybe I have to look to the mayor or the council. What do we have to do? I mean, as citizens, what do we have to do to make some changes there?
Yeah.
It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, most of the new taxing opportunities would have to get state approval, I'm presuming. How about others, in terms of the process you used? I did not hear a lot of yelling. I did not hear a lot of screaming. I did not see anybody hurting one another. A lot of listening, a lot of respect. Trish?
See, here's a perspective from the point of view of a facilitator. I have this abiding faith that when people come together and listen to one another, we may not dramatically change our point of view, but at least for a little while, we might think of things a little differently. And when we started out in our table, we reviewed what it meant to come to consensus.
We didn't say we have to come to consensus immediately, that we might come back and revisit something. But I really do think, and the beauty of a process like this and a group like this, is we have a lot of different people around the table, and often folks who don't feel they've had another opportunity. So I think the combination of those human factors and just coming together and having a conversation, and most importantly, we all care, I think that's a way to reach consensus. It's not a perfect process, but it works.
Trish, thank you very much. I would just observe one of the real beauties of this process, and I've witnessed it in the work I do at Leadership Greater Hartford as well. We have a collection of people who come from very different backgrounds, very different experiences, very different perspectives. What happens, though, if the climate is right, if the respect is there, if people are genuinely listening to one another, they'll not only have an opportunity, as I saw, to passionately advocate an idea, but they'll also listen to other ideas. And my fondest hope is that everybody leaves today having changed in some way, that maybe our point of view has been expanded, that we learned a piece of new information that wasn't available to us previously, and that we do have a greater sense of appreciation for those fine folks who do step into the arena every budget season to make some of the hardest decisions imaginable. So is there a final observation anyone would like to make before we close? Please.
I just came to take pictures, but it actually was great to me because I loved walking around and listening to the things that everybody had to say and what were concerns for certain people. Another thing that I found to be awesome was that, I just happened to be here taking pictures, and then people came upon communications, and, then they were like, I was like, well, I work in communications, I can answer a little bit maybe about some of your questions, and being able to just say, hey, yeah, there's 4 of us that work there, but the 4 of us do these specific things, and being able to clarify exactly what goes on and where that money is being distributed, because I think that one of the biggest things and hardest thing that I would have personally in this process is knowing exactly where that money is allocated, and the lack of knowledge of what specific people do in each department, because saying, wow, there's 4 people for communications may seem extreme, but when you find out that those 4 people are doing completely different jobs of that communication, then it makes a little bit more sense as to why that money is going in that way. And that's just something that I actually was excited that I got to be able to answer some questions for people, because that wasn't the reason why I was here in the first place. So then I found that really interesting.
So we're ready to close. We're going to ask Linda to close. Let me just salute Linda, and salute Richard, and salute Jeff, and salute Jose, and all the people who helped put this together. Is awesome. And to salute our elected officials, Mayor Segar, Council President Wooden, Councilwoman Jennings, Councilman McDonald, Raul de Jesus, all wonderful, wonderful contributors.
And I did want to ask Councilman De Jesus if you wanted to say anything, and Councilman McDonald, but I don't see him now. Where are you? Where are you? Oh, there you are. You didn't have a suit on, right? Is there anything you'd like to share? No, he's okay. Councilman De Jesus?
I haven't spoken in a while, so. No, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak with you guys, and thank you for showing up for something like this. I'm a little geek when it comes to the budget. This is my Super Bowl. This is my all. My wife doesn't like when I say my all because she wants to be my all. But during this season, it's tough because from April 20 to May 31st, we have about 41 days. And I say 41 because we could technically call a special meeting on the 31st and pass it on the last day if it really gets consensus. But it's been very insightful for me as a young homeowner in the city to be able to look into the departments and see the dreams, the ambitions of our directors, of our staff. And it's all money, and those are all numbers, but I think she mentioned it. These are people. And the amount of service, the amount of sacrifice that the staff has been putting in the effort to keep the service or the level of service at a point where we can exceed or even just do enough. It's been amazing. I've been here, and every single year I've been on council, we've had a deficit. But just to see how the staff, the administration, the council, the police departments, the fire departments, and every major department come together, and it's not always kumbaya, but towards the end we kind of do sit together and sing kumbaya. But it's very insightful, and I hope that this gets bigger. And one person, if you come in, you should bring another friend next year. If we have the funding for this, just kidding. But I think we need to encourage this. I mean, this is another database, and don't stop here. We have another few days that you can suggest ideas. Just because you put this in paper here, bring it to our attention. If you really are passionate about this, bring it to our attention. My email is online, my cell phone is online. You can contact me or any of our council members. I'm pretty sure all of us will be willing to listen into some of the ideas and suggestions, because we don't know it all. So this is why I don't grab a mic, because I can keep going and going. But thank you again for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
One quick thing, all of the recordings and all of the Excel spreadsheets and everything that took place here today will be posted onto hartford.gov probably within the week. So you can come back and look at this. And Jose was saying that the web-based application that you guys are using, Balancing Act, will be available live next week. So if you want to take a look at that as well. But I definitely encourage you to point people to the People's Budget on the website, and you can type it right in the search bar. It's really easy to find. It pops right up. So please search the People's Budget. All of the PowerPoint presentation is loaded up there. Last week's presentation or 2 weeks ago's presentation is loaded up there, and everything from today will be as well.
Right. I just want to just emphasize again what Stephanie just said, that Jeff and Jose will be solving that little glitch with Balancing Act that made the revenues and expenditures go like this. And once that's done, then individuals in their home, their office, wherever they are, can do the same exercise that you did, and all of that information that they put in will be made available to the mayor and the council. And if you when you signed in, if you put either your email or your mailing address, we will get you a copy of the written report that Council President Wooden said I was doing, so, which I am doing. I always do what he says. And I do want to thank all the city employees who came out here. And Councilman De Jesus, to your point about if we have the funding, I'm pretty sure that this was entirely free, because all of the employees here are on salary, so we get paid wherever we are. And all the facilitators were volunteers, and the Balancing Act company, Public Engagement, provided this, because it's new, provided it to us for no money for a year, with the understanding that we find the glitches and then they solve them. So we did find one, but they've been extremely supportive. I know Jeff has been on the phone with them numerous times. I'd ask the facilitators if you would just stand up again so we can really thank you for your work. And thank you to the Hartford Public Library, Richard in particular. Leadership Greater Hartford, Ted Carroll in particular. And Hartford 2000, Jackie McKinney in particular. Does anyone have anything else they want to say? Good, we're going home. Thank you so much for coming out.